Okay, welcome to CNBC Africa special. As always, my name is Arnold Kwizera. Today I'm coming to you from Rwanda's capital, Kigali, and I'm speaking to the chairman of BK Group PLC. Now, we are going to dive into a number of topics, but what is special about this segment is it's the captains of industry. Now, if you want to be part of this conversation, tweet us at CNBC Africa. You could tag me directly at The Real Kwizera. Today, we're joined by an old friend, Marc Holtzman. Welcome back to Kigali, first of all.
It's great to be here after a 15-month absence of COVID. You know, my days ended and began with Zoom calls with Kigali, and I'm so happy to be here in person and to have that opportunity to thank our staff for their tremendous work and the great performance during this difficult and challenging year.
It has been great performances, and you're taking me right through that conversation that we want to have regarding BK Group's performance. Now, we're lucky enough to speak to the CEO and the CFO about a month back, but I want your take on this as the group chairman. What stood out for you the most regarding the performance of the group as a whole?
What stood out for me was the resilience, the perseverance, the focus, the preparation that we made going into the pandemic for any eventuality that helped get us through probably the most difficult year in the bank's 50-plus year history. I'm so proud to affirm that we made $37 million net profit. That's up from $34 million the previous year. I would have been relieved at the beginning of the pandemic if you were to tell me that we could stay even, but we did better. And Dr. Diane Karasisi and our team performed in an exemplary fashion, making all of us very proud.
Marc, one thing, outside looking in, financial institutions remain quite resilient, right? There was a lot of skepticism and pessimism coming in from, people who are experts in the industry. That was March last year. We're now we're coming to June of 2021, and almost every bank has been profitable, right? So what are some of the fundamentals that have enabled the banking sector remain resilient? And I want us to look at the comparison of the 2008-2009 financial crisis, which was a downfall. What has been different?
Well, several things. I think the industry was better prepared this time. Secondly, as you say, most financial institutions have done well, but some have done better than others. And I'm particularly pleased that BK is at the leader of the pack. We showed that we could operate under very challenging circumstances. Our digitalization, while we still have a lot more to do, was sufficient to well carry us through and serve our customers remotely. We showed that people were indeed capable of adapting and working from home or doing what needed to be done. And all of our checks and balances proved the stress test.
I want us to talk about, I was speaking to the CEO of the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and I asked him a very pertinent question. Which counter was the most surprising? Now, to use the word surprising, he told me BK Group was the most surprising. I expected it to be something, Safaricom, one of your competitors. But he said that was the most surprising counter, and it's attracting a lot of, traction and investor conversation when it comes to that side of East Africa. Were you equally as surprised by how much stock that the BK Group counter was holding out for?
Well, several things. One is we're really proud of our 2017 listing in Nairobi. It was a very important step for us to make our stock more accessible to foreign investors. And Nairobi has proved a nice complement to the growing exchange here in Kigali. At the beginning of the crisis, there was definitely a disparity between the Nairobi price and the Kigali price. And I'm really pleased that there was sufficient activity on the Nairobi counter to now more than virtually equalize with the price here in Kigali.
Talking about the price of the BK shares, coming in today, it's not as volatile as one would expect. And here, I want you to speak to that investor out there who may be using one of your subsidiaries, BK Capital, to do some form of trading. on the Rwanda Stock Exchange. What needs to be done different?
Several things. First of all, the Rwandan Exchange and the Capital Markets Authority have done a really great job. And as you know, BK Capital takes great pride in having been a co-manager in the listing of MTN Rwanda. So that was both a big, prestigious event for us as BK Capital. But it's an even more important transformational event for the development of Rwanda's capital markets. So from my 30 years experience in emerging markets and seeing exchanges and capital markets develop, the three things that every major investor looks for in a exciting, dynamic frontier market like Rwanda is an opportunity to invest in the leading bank, the leading brewer, and the leading mobile phone company. And now we have that kind of triple peg here in Kigali, which I believe will translate into 1 + 1 + 1 equaling a lot more than 3.
One thing like our viewers would be interested in knowing, majority of the investors on the RSE are institutional investors. We have very limited or few retail investors. Now, how can that flip? How do you change that momentum?
It's a very good question, because for the development of a capital market to truly be successful, it has to be supported by local retail. In that respect, I think that we as BK have a job to do to educate the public, to let them know that we're growing at robust rates every year, that we are so excited about our future. Our footprint in digital is going to completely transform the customer experience right now, and I believe solidify BK's position as a market leader, not just in Africa, but in frontier markets around the world. Beyond that, we need to work very hard to, again, communicate the message that we're a good, normally speaking, dividend-paying stock. We have a lot of runway and a lot of growth ahead. And if I look to even myself and our key staff, we're all heavily invested in the stock. We all believe in the company. We all have been buying over the years, and relative to each of us own substantial positions in the company. And I, for one, expect this bank and the performance of the bank to both follow and to coincide with what will be a tremendous growth spurt for this country in the coming years.
BK is in a very strong position. A few years back, it was the biggest bank by assets. Now it's, when you look at your balance sheet, it's definitely the biggest bank in the country. But your competitors are not seated on their laurels. You're seeing the growth of Equity Bank. You're seeing interest from some European banks in trying to get into the market here. What's going to keep you ahead of the curve? And what do you think you are fit enough and ready to compete with some of the regional powerhouses?
Yeah. So I think we have several competitive advantages. One is we have the home court advantage. We're the largest lead bank in the country. We're also the authentically genuine Rwandese bank. So what that means is we can't just rest on that and expect people to come to us because we're the home team. We have to perform better than everybody. And because we know this market, because we have intimate knowledge of the businesses that are growing, I mean, there are not only our clients, but there are friends, our neighbors, our partners. We know these businesses better than anyone, and we know our customers as well. And that makes a huge difference, I think, in how people choose a financial institution. But to your point, Arnold, we have a very, very key challenge ahead. You're absolutely right. We have the Kenyan banks coming into the market, not only Equity, but KCB. We have mergers taking place. We have other mergers that are rumored. So it could basically leave us in the position of being the only dominant Rwandan player. Now, let me just tell you what that means, because I was vice chairman of Barclays and I had a global role across many countries. It means that any major decisions that have to be made in the banking and finance space, yes, can be originated locally, but they need the approval of the home office, either in Nairobi or Johannesburg or wherever it might be. This is our home office here in Kigali. We are the ones who make the end and final decisions, and we are the ones who know our customers best and know the challenges they face. I would say to you, even if I was not talking about BK, that it is absolutely essential for the growth of Rwanda's capital market sector for there to be a strong national champion, and that's us. Now, we welcome competition. Competition should make us better, and we have to be ahead of the game. You know, I've said to you before, quoting Miklos Dietz, the head of banking strategy at McKinsey, that banking will change more in the next 10 years than it has in the last 300 years. And what does that mean for us? It means that we have to be on our toes all the time, because our competitors today are not just the other banks. They're mobile phone companies, they're payment platforms, they're payment providers, the likes of Alibaba, Amazon, I mean, you name it. They're all either here or coming to the market. So we're working extra hard to stay ahead of the game.
I'm talking about the other competitors. Just before we run into, you know, BK Tech House and the insurance part of BK Group, other competitors, when people look at fintechs, when you look at the developments that have happened in the telco sector, MTN now splitting its companies, when you look at what Safaricom is doing with M-Pesa and wanting to split that, do you envision BK being able to, it growing into the conglomerate it's growing into, can it be able to make those home court kind of decisions, fast enough decisions to stay ahead of the curve of, you know, the fintechs that are also getting into this space?
The answer is unequivocally yes. And we must, in fact, to survive. So there are going to be two types of banks in 10 years from now. There are going to be the banks that miss the opportunity to transform. And those banks, they may still be in business, but they're going to be like utility companies today, power providers. They're going to perform a simple service for a basic margin, and their upside is going to be capped. And then there are going to be the winners. And the winners may be 1 out of 5 of the banks on this planet, maybe fewer. And BK fully intends to be part of the winning group. That's why we formed the BK Group. We're a fully integrated provider with not only banking services, but insurance products. By the way, our insurance company performed record results this year. We're profitable, we're healthy, we're growing. Our BK Capital, our investment banking subsidiary, we have aggressive plans not only to service our clients here, but with a whole host of new products, like, for example, private equity offerings, companies that are maybe 18 to 24 months pre-IPO, that are in retail, manufacturing, building, agriculture, that could use an injection, for instance, of 10 to 15 million US dollars. We have an active strategy now to identify those companies, to work with them. These are companies that are probably 18 to 24 months pre-IPO, and I predict that BK Capital is going to be perhaps our fastest growing subsidiary going forward. We already proved what we could do with the MTN listing. To us, that's a great badge of honor. That's a hallmark transaction, and we were very proud to be part of that transaction. But that's just an indication of what we have on the horizon, and the best is yet to come.
You brought up BK Capital. When do you think is going to be the right time for the offering of those new products from BK Capital?
Soon, now. I mean, we are literally hatching a strategy now under Kareen's excellent leadership to figure out how we can best serve our clients. We're in active discussion with clients. There are going to be 24 Rwandan companies that are going to want to access the international capital markets. Again, it's a two-stage process. First, in a smaller private placement, we'll help the companies restructure their accounting standards to, full international accounting standards. And then from there, we're going to go further to help them raise maybe 10 million, 15 million US, as each company would need according to their growth projections. And then we'll work with those companies for 18 to 24 months, maybe 30 months, to eventually IPO those companies.
Do you think the market is ready for that?
Absolutely, yes. I can tell you from my own experience, looking back even 30 years ago, when I had the privilege of leading an effort that resulted in the listing of Hungary's first private company on its international exchange since the Second World War. And I saw this pattern repeat itself in Eastern Europe, later in Asia, in South America, and now it's Africa's turn. And if you look at Africa, Rwanda is the leader of the pack. We have the most transparency, the easiest capital markets regime in Africa. We have the emergence of the Kigali International Financial Center and the key role they're going to play in offering all kinds of regulatory and economic incentives to companies to raise capital here. And I predict that we can even take the BK Capital model, and we have an intention to do this, to our neighboring countries in East Africa and play a key role not only in helping companies regionally raise money, but in creating a platform to support Rwandan companies that want to expand regionally.
Another of your subsidiaries that would be of interest to not only our viewers but also your shareholders is the insurance sector, the insurance part of BK. And you know, you've been very, I'll say, flexing when it comes to BK Insurance. But the reality on the ground is insurance penetration is still largely untapped.
Of course.
Now, there are some players who have been there for a while. What do you think you bring to the table that is different from the already existing insurance companies?
It's a big challenge. Insurance in Rwanda, it has a little more than a 2% penetration. So to use your words, it's virtually non-existent. So that's the good news. We have so much upside growth ahead of us. Insurance is a product that is not bought but sold. So let me explain what I mean. The average person on the street needs to be educated about the benefits of insurance, what it means. Everything from funeral insurance to health insurance to eventually, I would like to think for BK in the future, life insurance. So we have a very ambitious model. Insurance is a great product, and it's incumbent upon us to properly sell the product and to educate our clients about why they need the product. If we look at growth trends everywhere else in the world, I have no doubt that this is going to be an even more successful part of our business than almost any other.
Just to quote a few lines I read some time back, everybody needs insurance, but no one wants to pay for it.
People need it and do want to pay for it. I mean, for example, a family could be devastated without funeral insurance, health insurance. I mean, especially if you're traveling abroad or outside the country. I mean, this is a very, very important product. No one should travel outside of Rwanda without, having some form of even temporary health insurance. You have casualty insurance, you have property insurance. In fact, when we do a mortgage or make a loan, in almost every case to protect that security, we'll insist on insurance.
Well, Marc, just before we get into who Marc is, I want us to give us what you think the 2021 financial year is going to hold for the financial industry.
No question, 2020 was the most challenging. It's all uphill from here. Even if I look at the trends that I've seen, macro economic trends in the market, Rwanda is going to have a very good year in 2021.
Now, I want to get into Marc. You've recently moved to New Zealand. I don't know where you're headed to next, but who is Marc?
Well, first of all, I'm the husband of Kristen and the proud father of Ava, Colton, Emerson, and Lila. To me, that's my biggest mission and pride and joy in life. I got a late start at fatherhood, and I'm really proud of the fact not only that I was naturalized 5 years ago as a citizen of this great country, but that my wife and 4 children are also proud citizens of this great country.
Looking back at your career, it has spanned over 30 years, from Barclays to Hungary, Eastern Europe, Asia, Latin America, as you've mentioned. What have been some of the drawings that you have picked up from the different cultures that you think embed and embody the person that you are?
I always believe that in doing my business, and I try and impart this philosophy to others, that we should try to accomplish three things. First of all, it's good to make money. It's good to make money for your company, for yourself. There's no shame in being successful. In fact, it should be something to which people aspire. Secondly, have fun. We do serious work, and I tell my colleagues here at BK every day, we can take our jobs seriously without taking ourselves too seriously. So too often in business, because the nature of the business is very serious, people don't relax and enjoy themselves. And this is very important. I love my work, and I try and impart that feeling to others. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, do good for your country and do good for the people around you. A rising tide lifts all boats. So that's my basic business philosophy. But I would say that, I've been very privileged to, throughout my life, have half a dozen mentors who have been very impactful in my life. And at the top of the list is President Kagame, who changed my life by encouraging me to come to Rwanda and by giving me this opportunity to contribute and to give back in such a meaningful and rewarding way.
How did you meet him?
In 2004, I was president of the University of Denver. It was the 10th anniversary of the horrific genocide. President Kagame came to the University of Denver to make a major foreign policy address, to talk about how the reconciliation had taken place in Rwanda, the historic rebuilding of the first 10 years from 94 to 04, and about the future growth possibilities and optimism and hope. And there were 4,000 of our students that turned out on a rainy day in April, and he got a 5-minute standing ovation. It was absolutely inspirational. So it started a friendship between the two of us. We stayed in touch. I would see him at Davos at the World Economic Forum from year to year. And then 4 years later, I went back to business, becoming vice chairman of Barclays. And it happened to be on a slow news day. There was a small story buried in the second section of the Financial Times about my joining Barclays. And President Kagame reached out to me and asked me to come to Rwanda. And when I came here, he asked me to spend a day at BK, and after we talked about it, it led to my involvement. And here I am 12 years later, a very proud chairman of this amazing organization in this incredible country with leadership that is just inspirational by every measure.
Let's talk about your involvement and how you were interested in the finance sector. From, I want to believe, childhood, you've been in it again 30 years. What's the thing that drew you to the finance sector?
Well, several things. First of all, the ability to make an impact on people's lives, to change the lives of people. I mean, I see what we're doing here at BK when we make an $800 loan to a farmer to buy a cow. It absolutely changes the whole trajectory of their life. The way that our ICOFI agro-lending program has made a difference. I mean, I'll give you one example. When we started ICOFI, agriculture was 30% of the Rwandan economy, but only 6% of bank lending. And through the wonderful work of Dr. Diane Karasisi and our colleagues, we have made an incredible difference in closing that gap. And it's my hope that, in the coming years, that agricultural lending can match the power of agriculture in this economy. That's just one example.
Do you have any more examples?
Yeah, I would say this. If I look back over my career, the most important thing to me is the sense of reward and satisfaction that I get from making a difference or feeling like I'm making a difference in the lives of people. And I look at the lessons that I've been privileged to experience in my life, and I look at Rwanda, and I look at where Rwanda is right now in its transformation. And as far as this country has come, as much unlike Africa it is than any other country, and I say that in a positive way, in the fact that this place is so organized, so developed, so transparent, so free of corruption, so blessed by President Kagame and the leadership that he has inspired in this country. As much progress has been achieved here, again, the future is even brighter.
There's a young banker out there or downstairs, or maybe at a rival bank, who wants to pick a few lessons, principles in life. How can you get to be part of the creme de la creme of your industry? And it couldn't be banking. It could be your son. What are some of those values and principles that you think should be passed down, or that you feel you would have loved someone to pass down to you?
So I would say this: the most important thing that I learned from my father and from the mentors in my life is character, ethics, and integrity. And that really matters. And at the end of the day, you have to be true to yourself. And sometimes, by the way, that means walking away from what looks like an attractive economic opportunity. But if you always follow your conscience and your instincts, you'll always make the right choice. I wish maybe 30 years ago, 35 years ago, at the beginning of my career, somebody could have advised me more to take a more balanced approach to life, because hard work is rewarding and satisfying, but it's also important, I would say to that young banker, to my son or daughters, it's also important to develop yourself as a balanced person. It's important to have interests outside, in this case, of your own business, like banking and finance. It's really critical to balance your family, your life, your intellectual pursuits, and to know that you never get to a point in life where you stop growing.
Major challenges along the way that you faced? Any major challenges?
Yeah, sure. As a young man of 29 years, when I moved to Budapest, it was the first time I ever lived outside of the United States. I started my own business. It was just as likely that I would have failed as I ended up succeeding. And I had a lot of failures along the way. And I would say this: I've learned more from my failures in life than from my successes. And I would say to people, especially in Rwanda, don't fear failure. Take a chance. As long as you've thought it through and it's an intelligent choice, don't fear failure. Because if you don't take a risk, you won't experience the reward.
What I'm getting from that is always look at the glass as half full, right?
Yes,
absolutely. How do you keep your mind in tune with always looking at the glass half full?
So I read a lot. During the pandemic, I turned over a new leaf, inspired by my wife. I engaged in a much more active fitness routine. As I shared with you before we went on air, I lost 5 kilos. Instead of having a business dinner last night, I went down to the gym at the Marriott and, spent 45 vigorous minutes on the machines, and I feel great because of it. And at 61, I feel like I'm in better fighting shape than at any time in my life.
Well, you look great. I couldn't have guessed if you were 61.
You're very kind.
Thank you very much for making the time as always, Marc.
Well, thank you.
That was the BK Group PLC Chairman Marc Holtzman speaking to us regarding the company's performance, but also his individual takes and individual performances, and what has led him to be part of the creme de la creme of the sector. Now, as always, you can tweet us at CNBC Africa. You can tag me at The Real Quizzitor. Have a great rest of your day.